Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Power of Africa 2023. Today, join me in the Trades and Partnership panel where we are going to be discussing two-way trades in Africa and how we're going to improve it. So my name is Ivy Bina. I'm from Nairobi, Kenya. I am the CEO of Tinker Global, and allow me to toot my own horn a bit before I introduce my fellow panelists. So, as Ivy Bingham, I'm a remarkable visionary whose brilliance knows no bounds. As the CEO and driving force behind Tinker Global, I am on a mission to reshape the entrepreneurial landscape, particularly in Africa. I have a commitment to innovation and a passion for empowering entrepreneurs through investments and partnerships. I'm dedicated to creating a world where business dreams become a reality. Through Tinker Global's transformative solutions, I envision shaping Africa's future by unlocking untapped potential, fostering economic growth, and creating limitless opportunities. Join me in these incredible discussions as we shape a brighter, more prosperous Africa through trade and investments across our borders. So the first panelist I'd like to introduce you to is Dr. Sebastian Kopulande. He is from Zambia. So Dr. Sebastian Kopulande, wow, he is the co-founder of Vision Africa Development and CEO of Zambian International Trade and Investment Center. He is a distinguished leader and advocate for African development. With a wealth of experience in government, consultancy, and corporate roles, he has spearheaded transformative initiatives in trade, investment, and policy development. As a Rhodes Scholar with a PhD in management, he combines academic excellence with practical expertise. Driven by a passion for girl child education, he actively champions initiatives to provide free sanitary pads and promote menstrual hygiene. Dr. Kopulande is a visionary leader committed to building a prosperous and inclusive Africa. I'm really happy to introduce on stage Dr. Sebastian. Welcome. How are you today?
Thank you very much, Ivy, for that humbling introduction.
You're welcome.
You did your
We're so
homework.
happy to have you here with us. How is Zambia?
Zambia is good. It was bright this morning, but it's a bit on the cool side this afternoon. But generally, we are an air-conditioned country, so beautiful climate, most beautiful climate on the continent. Okay. Air-conditioned.
Awesome.
And anytime is a gentleman's time. So, yeah. Beautiful as
okay,
ever.
Thank you very much. So our next panelist is Miss Alia Mahdi. She lives in the United States of America, but has lived in Senegal for 8 years. So today in our panel discussion, she'll be representing Senegal. So Miss Alia Mahdi is a dynamic entrepreneur and philanthropist, known for her impactful initiatives in Africa and the African diaspora. As the co-founder and president of the Made in Africa project, she has successfully uplifted local artisans in Senegal, connecting them with international markets and fostering economic empowerment. Alia is also the CEO and founder of the Feminine Group, a collaborative effort focused on women's health, development, and business. With a diverse portfolio that includes international campaigns and projects, Alia is a bridge between Africans and African diaspora, dedicated to empowering youth and building meaningful international relations. So Miss Alia's passion and dedication makes her a trailblazer in promoting cultural exchange and economic growth. Welcome, Miss Alia Mahdi. I'm glad to meet you today. How are you?
I'm good, Ivy. Thank you so much for that beautiful introduction. I'm glad to be here today.
Yes, you're from the United States, but today you're representing Senegal. How is that?
It's good. It's good. Senegal is good. America is good. It's important to mention my time in Africa so people can understand how I've developed such an important relationship with the continent. So, thank you.
Yes, you're welcome. So, Dr. Sebastian and Ms. Alia, today our topic of discussion is practical approaches to promote two-way trade and investment in Africa. So if you can look at the statistics in Africa before we start with the questions, we know that you're 54 countries with a population of 1.4 billion, right? Which is roughly 16.75% of the population in the world. However, we only contribute 3% of the global trade, and we are the largest resource provider in the whole world. All our minerals, our oil, our fabric, everything is exported from Africa. Yet we are importing these products that require those raw materials like electronics, the textiles, machinery. So what is wrong? What is not going right in Africa? Why aren't we Africans trading with Africans? Like, how can we be able to promote trade within our continent? Dr. Sebastian, I will push that question to you.
Ivy, thank you very much. One, you set a good scenario in terms of description of the status quo. The African story is a big irony. Here is a continent which, in terms of resource endowment, is the richest in the world.
Mm-hmm.
But in terms of standards of living, it's the poorest in the world. Now, how you reconcile these two positions, I think, is the challenge of the African leadership today.
Mm-hmm.
And it will be the challenge of leaders to come. And the way we deal with it will determine how our posterity will look at us as today's Africa's leadership. Like you said, we only contribute 54, 55 countries, we only contribute 3% of the world's total trade.
Right, yeah.
When it comes to intra-African trade, Africa only contributes 17% to its total trade that is done within the continent. That means 83% of Africa's total trade is traded between Africa and the rest of the world. Right now, that is a rather disappointing number, because if you look at other regions in terms of intra-regional trade, if you look at Europe, for instance, intra-European trade, EU trade, amounts to 69% of total regional trade in Europe. In Asia, that is 59% of total Asian trade. In North America, it stands at 31%. Yet in Africa, our intra-African trade only contributes 17% of our trade. Now, that is rather unfortunate. But why is this? Maybe this is the question that we must ask ourselves. We have not taken sufficient steps to invest in value addition. And because as a continent, we have not created a market for the raw materials that we produce, because we are only trading in raw materials. Hence, we are trading with Europe, America, and all the other Western developed economies at the expense of our own, or because we have not developed internal capacity in the continent to be able to add value to the raw materials that we produce. Because, I'll tell you, no one consumes copper that Zambia produces, okay, in its raw form. No one consumes crude oil in its raw form. No one consumes timber in its raw form that we produce, unless we can add value to the timber, to the crude oil, to all our minerals. We cannot exchange these raw materials amongst ourselves. How can I sell timber to DRC? DRC also has timber. What are they going to do with it? But if DRC had the capacity for value addition to the timber, then we could have sold that raw material to.
So do you think we need to have more manufacturing? Like as Africa, we have to improve our manufacturing and processing to have this value-added products?
You just took one step a little faster than I did. Yes, that is the answer. Africa must invest in its value addition capability.
Yes.
That is why we in Vision Afrique Development, we are pushing for the establishment of special manufacturing zones across the entire African continent. And that this policy must be crafted specifically to ensure that there is value addition. So, and we must also be able as a continent to challenge ourselves with a policy position that we are not going to export our raw materials anymore without value addition within the continent. Yeah. Once we get to that value position, to that policy position, then we shall see that we will be producing our own consumer goods. Once we produce our own consumer goods, we can then trade those consumer goods amongst ourselves. We produce so much cotton.
Yes.
We produce so much cotton. But all this cotton goes, I can tell you, if you look at me, well, you are not looking at me in full, but I can tell you, I'm not ashamed to say, nothing that I am wearing now is made in Africa.
Outside.
Nothing. Even my pair of shoes, you can't see them, but they are not made in Africa. The suit I'm wearing is from India. It's from India. The glasses I'm wearing are from India. The watch is from Europe. The shoes are from China, probably using African leather.
And that's the States in the whole continent.
We really must move as a continent to build internal capacity to be able to add value to our raw materials. That is the only way we are going to step out of this vicious cycle of poverty.
Yeah. As I can also add on that, as we conclude the question, your final statement, how Africa, like if we are able to trade amongst ourselves, a good example is East Asia. So for instance, 2 decades ago, East Asia was at the same capacity as Africa was. But right now, their trade to GDP ratio is around 105%, which is competing with the likes of the EU, which is at 138%. And the reason why they attributed to this growth was because more than half of the exports are within their continent, are within that region of the continent. So East Africa or East Asia itself started trading amongst themselves, and that is why they are at a higher level, like in terms of trade and in terms of development, compared to a continent like ours, which is Africa, which is still trading what 19? What did you say? 17%?
17%. Yeah.
Yeah, of our total trade is with Africa.
And you see, in addition to that, okay. Yeah. Our manufacturing sector's contribution to the total continental GDP is only 12%.
12? Ooh, okay.
12%. As the manufacturing sector's contribution to the continent's GDP. And yet, believe you me, we have 60% of the world's uncultivated land. which is arable land and cultivated. 60% of it is on the African continent.
Yeah. So
And yet,
thank you for that.
even our agricultural production
Mm-hmm.
is a far cry compared to what other regions do, because we are undercapitalized. We're still using Stone Age technology.
Yeah.
But you see,
Wow.
these are things we know. Why we can't take action to change these things is what
We have
beats
to
the
take
mind.
action now. Yeah, that is true. And to change the subject a little bit, so that as Africans, you can be able to understand and use these resources that are available to us. We can be able now to become a manufacturing economy, produce all the goods that we can produce, so that we can sell them to our fellow Africans. I would like to ask Miss Aliyah, like, what resources and support are there available for companies in Africa who are looking to expand, and how can they access them?
Thank you. That is a wonderful question. I believe that there are a lot of resources for those who are looking to build in Africa. As Mr. Sebastian touched on earlier, he mentioned much about raw goods. For those who are interested in getting involved in any type of like product-based businesses, Africa obviously has a plethora of raw goods available to start building those kind of businesses. Um, Aside from all of the resources, which we know Africa has a plenty of, they are also they have the largest population of youth in the world. And because of that, it creates a lot of opportunity for staffing and job opportunities. So for business owners who want to come over and truly make an impact on the continent, it is definitely important to consider that we have opportunities to give more opportunities to the youth or expand opportunities to the youth in that region, provide them with training and other resources, which will ultimately be beneficial for business owners and the youth who are participating with those business owners in that relationship. Also, Africa is fairly affordable, especially for new startup business owners who are looking for, who are just getting their feet wet. Maybe they don't have a lot of capital in their beginning stages, but Africa definitely provides opportunity for those people to get their feet off the ground at a fair rate or fair wages, I would say. And then on top of that, like we mentioned before, the natural resources that are available across the continent. So, the raw goods, we've seen people come over and people have tapped into the produce, or I'm sorry, not the produce, the production market. Even with Made in Africa Project, that is exactly how it started. We were helping a lot of the artisans expose a lot of their work to the world, whether it was their clothing, whether it was their artwork, and whether it was shea butters and things like that, right? These are all different levels or entry level businesses that can ultimately keep commerce going throughout the continent. And it's a great start for many people. Africa offers many things. I could go on and on. Educational opportunities, right? Even for those of us who are in the diaspora, a lot of the traditional career paths may not actually be something that we're looking at here. Many of, I would have to say, most of our youth are mostly involved in like a lot of things that have to do with tech, which is nothing wrong with that. We definitely need that. But we also need a lot of the more traditional positions as well. For example, things like being able to tailor and manufacture your own clothing, right? Africa, there's an abundance of it everywhere. You see the youth, tailoring and manufacturing clothes all over the place. They know how to do that, right? So merging the two together is ultimately a benefit of both. If we have one side of the diaspora merging together in technology with the other side who has maybe some of the more traditional skills, and we're ultimately bridging a gap that's beneficial for both sides.
Okay. Oh, thank you for that, Miss Leah. You really mentioned very critical things like if us as Africans, we can be able to exploit the human capital as it's one of the hugest resources as Africa have, other than our mineral resources and all that. And you've also mentioned, you've talked about the diaspora. So let me just ask this. How do you think, or how do you see the diaspora being integral in the development of Africa, in the development of trade and investments in Africa? And what are the three top most, or the three most beneficial industries the diaspora can actually partner up or collaborate with Africans? Like, how does the diaspora in Africa work together in ensuring we are actually developing as a continent and improving our trade and investments and growing to compete with imagine with actually developed economies?
I would have to say that,
Before Leah comes in,
Yes,
can I just add something there? That's a
sure.
brilliant question. I mean, the question of the diaspora. If you look at one of our top priorities as Vision Afrique development, you can go on our website, visionafriquedevelopment.org, is to bring in and get the diaspora actively involved
Mm-hmm.
in issues to do with the development of Africa. Now, how ready is the diaspora to take up that challenge? Because that's the challenge we are throwing at you in the
yeah,
diaspora.
yeah,
We
for
want
sure.
you to come back. Mind you, this is home. No matter what you say, this is
Mm-hmm.
home. I'm proud of
Hmm.
you that you spent 8 years in Senegal.
Senegal.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
How many diasporans are taking those initiatives to come back and visit and just learn a little about Africa and just, you know,
Yeah.
claim your inheritance. Your inheritance is here.
Yes, yes. You're absolutely correct.
So,
And I would
one minute,
definitely,
I mean,
yeah,
do you think the diaspora is ready to engage on that score?
absolutely. Absolutely. It's definitely something that it's a movement that we have watched grow over these past almost a decade now. um, but it's something that the diaspora has definitely been interested in. But I think now, um, with access to media options and social media, especially, a lot of the African diaspora has decided to make that transition back to the continent. And we see a lot of them coming back almost on a daily basis and asking questions about how they can relocate and which countries can they choose to get involved in and so forth. So it's definitely a movement that is happening. It's a mass movement. Um, I believe a lot of them are definitely just trying to get their feet wet when they're just coming into the continent to learn about the culture and how they can truly connect with the community and the land and to see how they can be of benefit utilizing their own skills and resources that they can bring with them. But I definitely know that majority of the diaspora is definitely open to investing, relocating, and living on the continent for sure.
You and I have to talk off stage.
Okay. So talking
Yeah.
about the diasporans, Mr. Leah, like what are the most beneficial industries the diasporans can actually invest or collaborate within the African
Okay.
continent?
I know that's definitely a broad question. I really feel like they can get involved in everything,
Like
in all
from your
honesty.
perspective. Mhm.
Yes. But when we're looking at like business and investments, I definitely feel like hospitality and tourism is one of the major sectors. that we can get involved in just to, I feel like, get started. For people who are just really gaining interest in investing in Africa, um, tourism and hospitality kind of gives you an opportunity to get to know the different areas of Africa that you may be interested in investing in. We also know that tourism drives dollars to countries. So, if we're also promoting sustainable tourism, it provides opportunities for a lot of the locals and nationals in those countries to benefit from the tourism, whether they're shopping locally, building other, business relations. Tourism is a major sector to get involved in just because it ultimately brings the two of us together.
Awesome.
Secondly, um, land and real estate. Land and real estate is very important on a number of different levels. Um, but to actually be able to build and develop, right? So being able to build and develop, and we see Africa is beautiful, Maybe we haven't been always promoted the most beautiful images
Mm-hmm.
of the continent, um, but we see the potential. We see how fast it's developing in other countries. Even in Senegal, we've seen like major development over the past 8-9 years at exponential rates. So, land and real estate development, things like that, really providing like modern resources, modern facilities, modern hospitals, schools, things of that nature is always a very, very important sector to get involved in if we want to create a space that is comfortable for everyone who wants to come into the continent, right? So we want to make sure that we have all of those resources available for even those coming from the diaspora to make sure that they come into a comfortable space into Africa. So land, real estate, and development, and then finally education. Education is one of those things that I feel like is a two-way street between the two, between the diaspora and the continent. There are a lot of things that we can actually learn from each other um, to help build and progress both sides. Um, and I know that Mr. Sebastian had mentioned this earlier, things like machinery and raw goods and things, or getting machinery and manufacturing onto the continent. That is so important. I can't tell you how many times I've seen, some of the youth, or even just not even some of the youth, just people in general working in the continent, and sometimes it just seems like it's a very long process. For example, like making the beds, they make beautiful beds in Senegal. They're these handmade wooden beds, right? It's gorgeous. I love it, but the time frame that it actually takes to build these beds, like if we had machinery, we could literally cut the time down by a
Mm-hmm.
third, right? And you're
Yep.
producing at mass rates. And then when you're able to produce and you don't have to spend so much time hand
Mm-hmm.
making these products, it actually gives you an opportunity to start looking at building building business relationships, build
Yep.
business trade relationships where you can start to export these things out en masse.
Yeah.
Um, so definitely education, whether it be building the trade and partnerships that we need to get the machinery on the continent so that we can manufacture properly, or actually sending some of our youth into these places that are already manufacturing these goods and bringing that knowledge back home and getting the materials necessary so that we can actually produce our own machinery.
No. Yeah, awesome. Thank you so much, Mr. Leah. So we've
You're
talked
welcome.
about the diaspora and how the diaspora is going to be part of Africa in promoting trade. So now we can move back and start talking about Africa itself. I know the AU came together and they implemented a trade agreement, o- which is the African Continental Free Trade Area. That was in 2021, it became effective.
Mhm.
So, Ms. Ali has talked about enhancing the trade agreements that can actually also help people in the diaspora participate in Africa itself. So, how can Africans facilitate or help that trade agreement become more practical or become better, or we can accelerate its implementation? Dr. Sebastian, is that your phone?
My apologies. My apologies. Sorry.
It's okay.
Sorry.
It's okay. So
Sorry.
unfortunately, this question was for you.
Yes. Sorry. Could you just? I followed you
Repeat.
until the very end. Could you just repeat that, please?
Yeah, we were talking about the trade agreements that have been implemented in Africa, and we know that AU has the Vision 2063, and it's implemented the African Continental Free Trade Area, which became effective in 2021. So perhaps you can tell us like the practical steps Africans are actually taking to accelerate the implementation of that free trade area agreement, or which steps should we take?
Yes. Thank you very much. Prior to this, I was mourning about the low levels of intra-African trade,
Yeah.
and and I think that this question that you raise now is cardinal, and very, very, very important. Now, I think let's try and appreciate why was African Continental Free Trade Area established? What motivated that? What are the objectives of the largest single free
Trading
trade
bloc.
area agreement in the world?
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
Mm-hmm.
1.4 billion people, 3.2 trillion GDP,
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
massive. Why was it entered into? What were the objectives? Firstly,
Yeah.
was to create a single market. Brilliant.
Mhm.
And that single market in Africa would be backed by the free movement of people across the artificial borders that were given to us in our absence, sometime in Germany. When we were all not there, they decided to
Partition
take
of
our map
Africa.
uh, and draw lines across the continent. That's all right. But we want to
Mm-hmm.
get away from that compartmentalization of the continent into small little pieces. The African Continental Free Trade Area also wants to promote free movement of capital and promote intra-regional investment. It's aimed at creating a continental customs union and expanding intra-African trade. The AFTA also wants to deal with the issue of promoting sustainable development and boosting industrial development so as to create internal capacity within Africa to produce consumer goods. We also want to enhance Africa's trade competitiveness vis-a-vis the, um, the rest of the world. One thing clear is that has been made abundant clear by the Economic Commission for Africa is that implementation of the African Continental Free Trade Area can boost intra-African trade by as much as 52.4%. Now, are you following? Can you hear me? Can
Perfectly.
you
We are
can
following
you
and
hear me?
being impressed. Yes, yes. We are impressed by how much the free trade agreement can actually boost the African economy. Go on.
Yeah, by basically close to 54%. Now that is massive. That is
Mm-hmm.
massive. Now, the implementation of this is actually threatened unless a few issues can be addressed by Africa, particularly African governments. what is strange is that the accelerated implementation of AFTA is not mainly challenged by factors that require a lot of financial resources to implement. Most of them are what I call software issues. They are policy issues. They are matters of decision making without having to spend any money. Let me outline some of these practical steps that can be undertaken. Firstly, while the IMF reported in 2020 that in fact Africa has done very well in the cutting off of tariffs within the continent, now dropping the effective tariff rate from way north of 20% down to about 11%, and that has been commended by the IMF. We still have our trade being impeded by non-tariff trade barriers. These are simply matters of overregulation, putting so many regulations that stifle the movement of goods and people. We have put up so many licensing requirements. Look, I'm from a border town called Chembe, and I was member of parliament for Chembe between 2016 and 2015. So I border with DRC. I just crossed the river, I'm in DRC. Okay? And yet, for me to sell a goat across the river, oh my God, there are rules and rules that I have to go through. For me to sell a bag of maize that the Congolese people want from across the river, and they demand so much. They demand so much maize and all different types of food from the Zambian side that we cannot take that across because there are rules against what they call smuggling. You must get this permit, you must get phytosanitary certification, For God's sake, we've lived with these people. These people on either side of the river are actually relatives.
You're saying that even with the trade agreement, we still have so much regulations and licensing we have to cut through in order to trade.
They are still there, and they are still heavy. There is so many delays for a truck to move across a border point. There are customs delays. Our trade procedures are not standardized. There is a rule on one side of the border and a contradictory rule on the other side of the border. So, why can we not deal with this and just take them off? A removal of non-tariff barriers will boost trade massively. Then too, we must take action to harmonize our trade policies. Okay? Can we standardize our customs procedures? Okay? Our product standards are not aligned with each other. One country has one standard. So, say for instance, maize moisture content must be 14 to 16%. Others say, no, there must be 8%. Why don't we just standardize this and agree that, okay, maize that shall be traded across borders shall be on average 14% moisture content or something like that.
Yeah,
You know,
that's yeah, that would be brilliant.
you know, and then we have all manner of customs forms that must be filled in. There is one type of form you must fill in Zambia to go to Zimbabwe. When you reach Zimbabwe, you must fill in another customs form which is demanding different types of information. No. Then two, on the immigration, we still have requirements for visa within Africa. And what shocked me most was when I went first to Ethiopia. I needed a visa and I was kept at the airport for 4 hours to get a visa in Addis Ababa. And that is the African Union headquarters. I went there to attend the AU Heads of State Summit. So, what do we need visas for within the continent? Okay? Where there is trade, people must move.
I agree.
Okay? I want to trade with somebody that I can see. It makes life much easier. So we have to go and sign supply contracts. People have to move. We have to go and inspect the goods, pre-inspection, pre-shipment inspection rather. People have to move between countries to do that. And then I need a visa. And then I need to pay $100 to get that visa. I can't even pay it in my Zambian kwacha or the Kenyan shilling. I have got to get Alia's currency all the way from Washington, D.C. to pay my visa to go to Nairobi. Well, we don't get visas for Nairobi, thank God.
So
that's crazy.
You know,
yeah.
the issue of private sector dialogue between government and the private sector. You see, okay, if you check my background, I used to be director of industry in the Ministry of Commerce, Trade and Industry. Then I used to be presidential advisor to two presidents, President Mwanawasa and President Chiluba before then. You see, we as governments come up with a lot of trade agreements and all that. But when you ask yourself, who actually implements those trade agreements? It's the private sector, isn't it? It's the producers who do the actual trading. Okay, and you find that in these trade agreement negotiations, the private sector may not even be represented.
Yeah, and you've mentioned so many amazing things. Actually, how we are able, the steps that we can make as Africans to accelerate the implementation of the African Continental Free Trade Area. But then now, all these challenges that you're bringing up, who are we supposed to talk to, or who is supposed to do it? Like, who can actually reduce all these over-regulations? I thought of, from my perspective, I thought that the trade agreement would cover that. Like, why doesn't it? Who else if not this agreement?
Well, it's really ourselves. If we emphasize more dialogue between private sector and governments, because the private sector is one which produces the goods and actually sells the goods. They are the ones that export and import. They are the ones who fill in the customs forms. They are the ones who get visas. So they know where the challenges are. Okay, they know where the challenges are, and they should be able to engage in meaningful, honest dialogue with the government to tell them this is the challenge we are facing with these trade agreements. While the trade agreement is there, it is there on paper.
Yeah.
It is not practically
Impossible.
in
Oh, yeah.
application.
Yeah.
So the private sector know where the problem is. Engage your government and tell the government to remove that. And the government should be open to receive those suggestions. In any case, it is in the interest of government
Mm-hmm.
to make trade easier, because as trade becomes easier, their private companies make more profits, then they collect more taxes.
Okay. I hear you.
Then they produce better services for the citizens
People.
of their country. Okay.
That's
Then
very true.
if they produce better services, then they become more popular with their citizens. And if they are politicians like me, then I get voted in.
Yeah.
It's in their
Yeah, I hope we can be able to implement that, and to all the people who are listening, we need change and we need to do it. And from your end, Miss Alea, Dr. Sebastian has actually talked about the challenges that are affecting the trade agreement. And what about you? What challenges do you see the diaspora facing? Are they similar to the challenges us as Africans are facing regards to our own trade agreements, or what challenges do you think we're facing, the diaspora is facing, and how can we mitigate them?
There are definitely challenges with
Mm-hmm.
trade in Africa as a whole. Whether you're living on the continent or you're in the diaspora, um, it has definitely been a challenge. Just in things as simple as like exporting goods or getting like fast um, delivery services through the mail. I will say that they have definitely improved over the years from what I've seen from the start. Um, but I know that there are definitely issues with like customs clearance and things like that. Even when we're exporting into the US, there have been plenty of times where our exports have been held up at customs for whatever reason, just because they might have felt like it. But you know, those type of things are definitely challenges for us as a whole. And then we not only have these challenges that Mr. Sebastian mentioned about the policies and regulations and things of that nature, but then we also have other things that the diaspora has to be prepared for coming into the continent as well. So one of those things is first making sure that they are connecting and building with people um, who have all of their paperwork and things in order, far as like legitimacy factors, and making sure that you know they're not getting taken advantage of, or a lot of times it's not even like intentional. Sometimes it's just like a matter of paperwork, you know what I mean? Things like that that kind of throw off an entire deal. So, you know, making sure that you have like your lawyers and things like that on the ground who are effective and efficient and can really make sure that whatever you're planning to invest in and trade with Africa, it's a good deal and you're making sure that you're protecting your investment. Um, Also, just making sure that the language barrier is always a challenge. If you're not going into an English speaking country, um, you have to be prepared for that. And along with the language barrier comes like, um, I almost want to call it like a cultural barrier. The way that business is done in Africa on a cultural perspective. Um, you know, there are some things that you may need to be prepared for that maybe you're not used to coming from the States or in the diaspora, right? So kind of getting a feel for that and learning the land that you're working with, which is really important, so that you are not only just being effective for yourself, but also being effective for the community that you're working with. And that's another important factor, is just always making sure that it's like a beneficial two-way street for both parties involved. Um, so I would have to say that those are probably some of the major challenges when it comes from the diaspora, I would have to say. I know another challenge that the diaspora faces is also with sometimes it's just capital. So for us, and even for some of the people who are living on the continent, I know sometimes like going through the whole banking system and the financial system can be a headache sometimes, as far as whether it's getting loans and things of that nature to invest with, or different forms of capital. I know even on the continent, a lot of times there's a lot of collateral that's required in order for you to put up in order to get these, to get the financing and the funding in order to build up these different businesses and trade, trade partnerships or whatnot. And then on state side or from the side of the U.S., it's available, but there are also, certain steps that have to be put into place in order before you can actually take advantage of that capital to invest as well. So capital is definitely another challenge. It's something that has to be done creatively, like creative. I call it creative financing, and so where you can actually help get the funding that you need to put it over into the continent. Because the reality of it is that if I walk into a bank in the United States, there's nowhere where I can go and say, hey, can you guys just give me this money so I can go put it in Africa? Usually it has to be creatively done, right? They usually want the money to stay here. So if you're getting the money here, they want you to invest in the houses here, the real estate here, everything here, your businesses here. They really don't want you to take that money out of the US.
That's
So
true.
we have to strategically find ways to actually gain access to capital, because everyone needs capital in order for any of these things to work, um, and utilize it abroad. So those are some of the major challenges, I think.
Yeah. Thank you very
Okay,
much for
you're
that.
I,
welcome.
I,
You
I
want
think
to add something?
if I can comment on that, particularly
Mm-hmm.
on Alia's last point on financing.
Mm-hmm.
Financing has been a major hindrance to the growth of African business sector,
Yes.
and it is amazing that it seems to have always taken the last seat on the priority listing of
Mm-hmm.
development requirements for the continent, and yet
Oh,
it's supposed to be sitting up there.
number one. Yeah.
Yeah, and this is where implementation of African Continental Free Trade Area will either succeed or fall flat right on its face. Because if you do not have capital, there will be no productivity on the continent.
Yeah.
One thing that I know working in the space that I'm working is that there is no shortage of ideas. There's no shortage of business ideas.
Yeah.
But, you know, there is shortage of resources to bring those ideas to reality.
To fruition. That is very true. I'm actually working on that myself. Like with my company Tinker Global, we found that problem in Africa and across the world where there's so many ideas, but then, and there are also so many resources, but then the people who have these resources probably do not know or have the right channels on where to invest or put those resources into actions that they can be utilized. So I really do echo your point.
And unfortunately, institutions such as the African Development Bank, which should have
Mhm.
been playing the catalytic role in the delivery of capital,
Yeah.
unfortunately, are not doing that. They are operating at a level, and their financing is mostly on government projects. Fine, but what about SMEs?
Mm-hmm. And that's the
SMEs are the
majority
big
of
producers.
businesses.
SMEs
Mm-hmm.
are the biggest employer.
Yeah.
Where will the SMEs run to? Why aren't governments coming up with innovative enterprise financing schemes that will help? I'll tell you,
Mm-hmm.
when I was a advisor to President Levi Mwanawasa, I came up with the idea of setting up what I called a citizens economic empowerment commission that has done a good job, because they get money from the national budget and lend to private entrepreneurs. But the amount of money is so little, and it's the demand for that funding is so high. So I think governments should do a little more. And it's working because repayments are actually taking place. In some instances, we had failures, but generally there's something good happening there. I think we need to be a little more creative as Africa to ensure that we bring the capital required for the SMEs that will produce goods that will then be traded across African borders. Thanks. That was just to add on to Alia's very important point there.
Yeah. Thank you very much for that. I think us as Africans, we really need to do more, like in supporting ourselves and supporting our own SMEs so that we can be able to build the Africa that we want. So I know we can talk about trade all day long because trade actually spears or steers the entire world. But now we have had quite a long discussion, and I would like to invite you for your closing remarks. So that we'll start with Miss Alia. Probably you can also tell us like what vision you have for the partnerships or investments in Africa in your closing remarks. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much for having me on the Power Africa Conference 2023. I would just really like to say, um, our vision through the Main Africa Project and um, even the Feminine Group and the Al-Kabelan Development Fund is that the diaspora is able to connect and build with Africa in any way necessary on every level of development. Um, and in that, we know that the diaspora and the African, uh, sorry, the African people are some of the largest on the entire planet of African descent. So, once we all come together, and I'm not even just talking about in the US, we have the diaspora all over. In the UK, we have the diaspora in South America, right? We're literally a global nation. And once we are able to actually connect and build with each other on that global scale, there's really nothing that can stop us, right? So that is important for all of us to be able to connect and build those relations with each other. And I believe that as we do that, each and every one of us, each one reach one, each one teach one, we will be able to make the necessary impact that we need to get these policies changed across the continent, right? And create a space where it is beneficial for everyone. And we will see the African people rise on the global level.
Okay, thank you for that. And what about you, Dr. Sebastian? What do you think is the future for Africa? Or what vision do you have for Africa in your closing remarks?
This is where we are. The best endowed continent on the surface of the earth, but the poorest. Its people are the poorest. Our own trade amongst ourselves is only 17% of our total trade. 83% we do with others. The reason is simple. We do not have the capacity to produce our own consumer goods. Hence, even though we have 60% of total arable land in the world, we are still food insecure. We are net importers of food. We have to be fed by other regions of the world. We have the water, we have the climate, and yet we still wallow in debilitating poverty. That must challenge us as a continent. That must challenge us as a people, and it must challenge us as a people, not only as a people on the continent, but of all people that are of a descent that they can identify to be African. My vision for this continent is that once we awaken, once we wake up, open our eyes, and see what it is that we own, and see what it is that God gave us for free, and realize that at the end of the day, we are actually the richest continent in the world, and that we can be the most dominant economic force on the surface of this earth, we shall wake up and devise the right policies to take our rightful place at the table of community of nations. We need, as a continent, to come together as a people of African descent. By that I mean the diaspora must come and join hands with every African on the continent so that we can grow the economic potential of this continent. We've talked potential for too long. Let's talk about the reality. Let us make Africa what God meant it to be. Because that is why God gave us all these resources. It is not to make us poor. He gave us the resources so that we can be wealthy. By not being wealthy, we're going to explain. One day we'll sit before him and he will ask us, what did you do with what I gave you? Negligence we shall be guilty of on that day. So arise, Africa. Arise, Africa. Wake up, Africa, and be who you are supposed to be. Fear no domination. For once you are decided, no force can stop you.
Wow, I don't think I could have said it better than that.
It's beautiful. It's perfect.
Yeah, arise, Africa. We really need to wake up and utilize our resources and do the most that we can. We are not a poor continent, honestly. We're extremely rich. We just need to know how to harness our resources and make them make us richer, right? And make us able to feed the people who can't make us be able to feed our people, provide for people, and care for the future generations there are. So there you have it, my lovely panelists, Dr. Sebastian and Miss Aliyah. We have talked about trade and partnership today, and we hope that we can, with this conversation, we can include more people in it, have not just have a conversation, actually do something. We need to work for Africa to have the Africa that we want. Without work, Africa will just, it will just exist without people. So thank you very much for joining us, and we hope we can continue with this conversation, not just here, also everywhere else, in our socials, or even when we meet out there in the real world. Thank you very much. It was a pleasure to have you.
Thank you. And
Brilliant.
I want to add one more
Thank you.
thing before you
Yes.
close out.
Yes.
And I just want to say this to a lot of the African youth as well, is that, wealth is a mindset. It all starts in the mind. And until we can come to the conclusion that Africa does have most of the wealth, because I've spoken to so many youth who feel like all of the wealth is abroad and they have to travel abroad to get to it. But no, it's right there. It's right at home in your backyard. Don't walk away from it, embrace it and face it. So it's definitely a mindset. We have to start with the minds first. Okay.
Yes, thank you. It's actually like the book Acres of Diamonds.
Mhm.
Exactly that, where people go somewhere else to look for wealth, but wealth is just on in their backyard. Yes,
Yes,
thank you
yes.
for that, Miss Leah, and thank you,
You're
Mr.
welcome.
Dr. Sebastian. So we hope to continue this conversation. Okay, bye bye.
Thank you. Bye bye.